Black women are nearly 3 times as likely to die as other races of women in childbirth. Find out how systemic racism is one of the leading causes of this disturbing statistic. Stay tuned right after this. Hey y'all, what's up? This is attorney Chloe Corbett, aka the Duchess of Justice. I am one half of the Defiant Lawyers, where we provide legal analysis of trending politics, policies, personalities, and pop culture to empower you to defy this unjust legal system and nullify systemic racism. And that last part is what I'm going to be focusing on today, nullifying systemic racism. We have Mother's Day coming up on Sunday, and I thought it was a very fitting topic. With the help of my mother, who gave me this idea, to discuss the disturbing and horrifying statistics of the Black maternal mortality rate here in the United States and the increasing number of Black women that die in childbirth, that are misdiagnosed while pregnant, and everything else that comes from giving life in this country. And so I want to just give a shout out to my wonderful mother, Antonia, and just say, I love you so much, Mom. I want to wish you a very happy Mother's Day. And thank you again for being an inspiration to me and inspiring me to discuss this topic, because this information needs to get out. So with that said, let's get into it. The first thing I want to do is get into the numbers, the statistics about this, because we first have to understand the numbers to address the cause, to then potentially address solutions to get this changed. So I am looking at some numbers from the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. This is a report from last year, from March 2023. And it's entitled The Maternal Mortality Rates in the United States from 2021. This report, according to the CDC, says in 2021, the maternal mortality rate for non-Hispanic Black women was 69.9 deaths per 100,000 live births, 2.6 times the rate for non-Hispanic white women, which was 26.6. It goes on to say that rates for Black women were significantly higher than rates for white and Hispanic women. Wow. 69.9 deaths per 100,000 live births is the maternal mortality rate for Black women in this country. Almost 3 times as much as the overall maternal mortality rate. This is staggering. This is staggering, guys. And it's only continuing to get worse. Let's continue. I want to show you all some more statistics from KFF, which is an independent source for health policy research, polling, and news. This report is entitled Racial Disparities in Maternal and Infant Health, Current Status and Efforts to Address Them. This was published on November 1st, 2022. And so let's get into it. So they start by giving a summary, as we know that the stark racial disparities in maternal and infant health in the United States have persisted for decades, despite continued advancements in medical care. So even though medical care has continued to get better on paper, the rate of Black maternal mortality has continued to go up. We'll get into why in a little bit. Okay. This report states that Black and American Indian and Alaska Native women have higher rates of pregnancy-related death compared to white women. Pregnancy-related mortality rates among Black and AIAN, which are Alaska Native women, are over 3 and 2 times higher, respectively, compared to the rate for white women. Wow. Infants born to Black, Alaska Native, and American Indian people have markedly higher mortality rates than those born to white women. Maternal death rates increased during the COVID-19 pandemic, and racial disparities widening for Black women. That's not surprising, because there was a disproportionate number of Black people who died because of COVID-19. A lot of African Americans are first responders. They are in the careers where They did not have the luxury to stay home or work from home or work virtually. They were on the front lines. And so their exposure to COVID-19 was even higher. And we know that when twice impeached former president was in office, he did not take COVID-19 seriously whatsoever. And I believe it's because he saw the numbers that COVID-19 disproportionately affected Black people. Again, that goes to the systemic racism in this country, the systemic poverty that disproportionately affects the African American community as well. This report says that the pregnancy-related mortality rate for Black women between ages 30 to 34 widens to over 4 times higher than the rate for white women, which is 48.6 for Black women between the ages of 30 to 34 versus 11.3 for white women per 100,000 live births. Moreover, these statistics persist across education levels. This is important. Notably, the pregnancy-related mortality rate for Black women who completed college education or higher is 5.2 times higher than the rate for white women with the same educational attainment, and 1.6 times higher than the rate for white women with less than a high school diploma. This is big, guys. So no matter what socioeconomic or educational level Black women are, the Black maternal mortality rate is significantly higher than it is for white women. So again, this is not even necessarily a socioeconomic issue. This is a race issue. This is a racism issue that must be addressed. Okay? Before I get into the causes of this overwhelming Black maternal mortality rate, I want to get into some personal stories, because throughout the last few years, there have been prominent and not so prominent stories of Black women who have died. And I want to give light to some of these stories and shed light on them for you all so that you can do your own research and make sure that you and your loved ones are protected as well. So there was a woman in New York, a Black woman. Her name was Christine Fields. She was a 30-year-old Black woman who bled to death after giving birth at Woodhull Medical Center in Brooklyn. After some investigation, investigators found that the hospital was the cause of Ms. Fields' death because of a doctor's mistake. So the New York Times reports that investigators with the New York State Department of Health have concluded that a troubling lapse by a surgical team at a hospital in Brooklyn resulted in the recent death of a 30-year-old mother who gave birth by C-section. It is the second known instance in recent years in which state health authorities out of New York have blamed doctors for a maternal death at Woodhull Medical Center. In New York City, according to the New York Times, Black women are 9 times more likely to die during childbirth than white women. 9 times. That's even larger than the national average, which is 3 times more likely. 9 times more likely to die during childbirth. That disparity is far sharper than the national one, and this has to be addressed, you all. This is unacceptable in a modern country like the United States. For this many women to be dying, giving birth, is shameful. Okay? For Ms. Fields, she gave birth to a son, and hours after she delivered her son, Ms. Fields bled to death. Okay? There was a 2-page New York State Health Department document that refers to Mrs. Fields' death. According to that document, the document states explicitly that an error by medical staff members resulted in her death. It describes a troubling communication breakdown in which the surgical team, a reference to the staff members who performed the C-section, did not alert others of complications that arose during surgery. The most serious of those was a uterine arterial injury, and that injury was not mentioned in the initial medical records pertaining to the C-section. What? Mrs. Fields' fiance, Mr. Perez, said that Ms. Fields quickly deteriorated after she was sent to a recovery room following the procedure. He said he kept trying to talk to her but got little response. He searched for ice to put on her lips. He found a nurse and told her that there was something very wrong because she had slumped to one side. Wow. My heart and prayers go out to Ms. Fields' family, her son, her fiance, and there are countless number of stories like this. Let's go to another one. Another case of this awful statistic is the case of Crystal Chrissy Anderson, who died of sepsis on March 20th of this year following the stillbirth of her daughter. She was a former Kansas City chief, and I believe she also became an engineer. It's reported in People that Miss Anderson died after the stillbirth of her daughter with her husband, Charlotte Willow, on March 16th. Charlotte was born during Miss Anderson's 20th week of pregnancy. The couple rushed to the hospital because Chrissy, as she was known, was feeling back pain, which was a symptom the couple had been told by their doctor could be due to contractions or dehydrations. Tests revealed the presence of amniotic fluid, and Charlotte's, the baby's heartbeat, couldn't be detected later that day. Hours after her daughter's death, Chrissy spiked her fever and began showing signs of severe sepsis. And unfortunately, she passed from sepsis. Again, another black woman. She was a business owner. She was a former cheerleader. She was a wife, a mother, all of these things. Literally in the prime of her life, in great physical shape, surrounding complications from a pregnancy. This has to be addressed. Our country has to address this. So let's talk about some of the causes. Let's talk about some of the causes of why so many more black women are dying in childbirth or due to pregnancy-related complications. So what is the root cause of this disproportionate rate of black women dying in childbirth? I'm going to refer to an article from the University of Chicago Medicine. It's entitled Racial Justice and Maternal Health, How to Reduce Black Maternal Mortality. It's from an April 12, 2023 article. They asked the question, why are black women at higher risk for pregnancy complications? And I agree with their answer. They say the most straightforward answer is racism. The root causes of disproportionate pregnancy complications in black women are driven by inequality, discrimination, and long-standing racism that is deeply rooted in the United States healthcare system. This is not just my words or my opinion. This is coming from a publication of medical professionals who see the actual realities of the statistics and the examples that we just went through before. Okay, they see it on an everyday basis. This article says that systemic racism impacts every aspect of healthcare. Every aspect. It begins before birth and continues until death. Black babies are more than twice as likely as white babies to die at birth or in the first year of life. And life expectancy is shorter for black women compared to white women. Okay. They go on to say that race is a social construct with significant impact on the health and well-being of black people. At every stage of life, generations of structural racism impact black people disproportionately in the form of social and health disparities, such as, so it goes even beyond what happens in the hospitals. It goes to segregated housing, the digital divide, educational barriers, economic suppression, and access to quality health care. From the time that black bodies were stolen and violently brought to this country, when we were packed like sardines in boats and shipped to the Caribbean, to this country, this government, this country, this system did not care about our bodies, our health, none of that. We know that on plantations, black women were torn away from their babies. Black women were expected to give birth and then get right back to the field or being in the house. We know that black women were violently SA'd. I don't want to say the full word because of YouTube's restrictions, but they were taken advantage of by the white enslavers. So this country has never cared about our health, about our life, about any of that. And so it seeps into every institution that we have: educational, justice, healthcare, all of that. And so because that focus has never been on protecting life, even though our country claims that we all should have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, we know that did not apply to us. From our U.S. Constitution on down, Okay. And so if over generations and hundreds of years, a country and a system does not care about black people and its citizens, we're going to have these statistics. Okay. Racism. You heard it here from before birth and continues into death. Every aspect of healthcare. That's mind boggling. Even myself personally, I don't like going to the doctor. I feel like a lot of times when I've gone to the doctor, a lot of doctors truly don't care or listen to what I tell them. I feel like even just going to the ER, or I'll do whatever I can to make sure that I don't have to go to the hospital, because it is ingrained in me and in a lot of African Americans that we know that this healthcare system was not made for us. It does not listen to us. It does not care about us. Whether it be what happened to the Tuskegee Airmen, in which they were purposefully injected with disease, or to what happened to Henrietta Lacks, where her cells were taken from her without her consent, used in future medicine, but without her consent, without acknowledgement until her family demanded it decades upon decades later. All of that. I remember an instance, I had a infected tooth and I was in so much pain. And people who know me, they know that I typically don't cry a lot. I'm not really a crier. Okay. But on this day, this infected tooth, and any person who has had dental issues, you know how absolutely painful it is. It was extremely painful. So much so that I asked my brother, thank God for him, to rush me to the ER at one of the best hospitals here in our area. It is nationally known to be one of the best hospitals. And so I'm in the ER. I'm in excruciating pain to the fact where I'm basically howling and crying, something that is very atypical for me. And we waited in that ER for 6, 7, 8 hours. We even then left and then came back because I just could not take it. And when I was describing my pain to the nursing staff, I feel like they didn't take me seriously. Now, granted, I know this is an ER. There are people there with life-threatening complications. There are all types of people that are in need and sick. But I could tell that my pain was not the focus. And it wasn't until I had to pull the, hey, I know my rights. I've been waiting here. You all have not taken my pain seriously. I need to see a doctor. It was not until I advocated for myself strongly that not more than 5 minutes later, I was finally in the back seeing a doctor within 5 minutes. That is the type of stuff that we have to do as black people, and especially black women in this country. We have to advocate for ourselves because nobody else will. Not the doctors, not the medical staff. We have to make sure that we stand firm and get the care that we know that we need. And that's what I had to do on that day. And when I did, that's when they finally took me seriously. We know, and I've read that a lot of times, a lot of doctors and nurses, they were taught that black people have a higher pain threshold. So when, we're asked how much pain are you in on a scale of 1 to 10, they automatically bump our pain threshold higher because they believe that we can deal with it more. That in and of itself is racist. That is the othering that they've attempted to do. And so racism is the root cause of the black maternal mortality rate. Let's dive deeper into this article. How do racism, inequality, and discrimination lead to disparities in black maternal health? This article says the leading causes of maternal death and complications in the U.S. are all treatable conditions: heart disease, high blood pressure, infection, embolism, and hemorrhage. There is nothing in a black person's genes or anything inherently wrong with their body that raises the risk for complications. But treatable conditions can become life or death illnesses when implicit bias and systemic racism lead to delayed or missed diagnosis, delayed or withheld treatment, disparities in access to health education. I experienced the second one when I went to that ER. Delayed or withheld treatment for hours upon hours upon hours. A lot of times there are delayed or missed diagnoses of black women when it comes to pregnancy and potential pregnancy complications. So even though it's a treatable condition, it can become life or death when you don't diagnose it in time, or you don't take their pain seriously, or you withhold treatment. Like, oh, let me go handle my other patients. She can wait here. This black mother, this black woman, this black pregnant person can wait here for a few hours while I go handle the other patients. And in those few hours like that, their life can be taken. That's what we're talking about. Okay? So how can we reduce the disparity in the black maternal mortality rate? Let me go back to the article. The first thing that they say is that medical care providers must control the things that they control by treating every patient they encounter with dignity and respect. That's the basics of it. That is the basics of nullifying every type of systemic racism. Recognizing the dignity and respect and humanity of African Americans in this country. That's what racism attempts to do. Take away our humanity. That's what slavery did. That's what our law did. They attempted to take away our humanity and see us only as property. So the basic core fundamental thing that medical providers must do to reduce this disparity is to see each and every black patient as human, listen, and encounter them with dignity and respect. That's the basics. I believe if we do that, we can do a lot to overturn and to stop this disparity instead of grouping black people into these boxes. Okay? We need to improve access to quality health care. So based on what I've read, this is what I've come up with. We need to make sure that black women, black mothers have access to affordable healthcare services, including prenatal care for all pregnant individuals. I've seen some proposals to expand Medicaid coverage. I think right now on the federal level, Medicaid care coverage for black women who just gave birth, I want to say it's 60 days. So there's been proposals to expand it up to a year. Increase funding for community health centers. And also incentivize healthcare providers to work in underserved areas. We have to improve the access to quality healthcare, whether it be someone who is of a lower socioeconomic status or higher. What matters is the quality of the healthcare. Next, we have to train these doctors and these healthcare providers on their implicit biases and racism. We got to train them to recognize and mitigate implicit bias and racism in clinical settings. Okay? It has to be addressed in medical schools, in the nursing schools, at the hospital training programs, at the clinics, at the government facilities. We need that training. We need that implicit bias training. Now, there has been a campaign to take away DEI programs, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which typically implicit bias training will fall under. Take away implicit bias training, make spaces less diverse. We know why. We know that goes back to racism. But it is incumbent on healthcare providers who take an oath to save lives, to take it upon themselves, to address their own implicit bias, provide these programs so that not one more black woman dies needlessly due to pregnancy complications, due to giving life to another human being. I think with those three things, doctors actually listening, treating black patients with dignity and respect, improving access to quality health care, and addressing implicit bias and racism could do so much to reduce the disparity in the black maternal mortality rate. I'm going to stop it right here, you all. Let me know what you all's thoughts are about this topic. If you feel comfortable, do you know someone who has dealt with this topic, or have you just felt in general, if you're black, that you have been treated differently in the healthcare system? We want to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for everyone who tunes in to our videos. Leave your comments. I do want to let you know that we have created a membership portion of this channel. So if you're interested in continuing to support us and be a part of our growing community, you can hit the join button and become a member of the Defiant Lawyers channel. We look forward to continuing to interact with you all. And I pray and hope that you all have a blessed Mother's Day. With that, I'm out, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.